Hello, everybody. Member Brinker is being switched over. Yeah. Hi, City Manager Lewis. I think you guys hear me? Okay. All right, let's call this meeting to order of the Organized Residential Waste and Recycling Collection Citizens Committee. And Ms. Chavez, will you please take roll?
Chair Green.
Present.
Vice Chair Borman.
Here.
Member Brinker.
Here.
Member Brown.
Here.
Member Hupka. Member Kawanabe.
Here.
Member Leib.
Here.
And Director DeAndre.
Here.
All right, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
Motion to approve.
Thanks, Vice Chair Borman. Is there a second?
I'll second that. This is Kanji.
Thank you, Member Kawanabe. Ms. Chavez, will you please take a vote?
Chair Green.
Yes.
Vice Chair Borman.
Yes.
Member Brinker.
Yes.
Member Brown.
Yes.
Member Kawanabe.
Yes.
And Member Leib.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you. And we'll move into recognition of public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to address our committee. There's an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. The committee may ask questions for clarification, but there won't be dialogue. Please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. Currently, we don't have the ability for public presentations, but if you had something, you could submit it for inclusion in public record. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak? I see a comment, a chat from C. Ann Dickerson. So if C. Ann Dickerson would like to address the committee, please go ahead. And Ms. Chavez, will you please time these so we know when the 3 minutes are up?
Yes.
Thank you.
Am I
So-
supposed to go now?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I'm C.Ann Dickerson. I live in District 1. I'd like to know how much of the 27 monthly charge is administration fee, and does the 27 less the administration fee go to the selected single hauler chosen? I noted in your spreadsheet that 5 of the cities that have single hauler trash collection have tiered services. The smaller the volume to be collected, the less is charged, and the rates include recycling and composting. Loveland's lowest rates are $3.25 and $6.50 a month. All but 2 of the cities are lower than $27, which we're being charged. Currently, most of the trash collectors in Inglewood provide more services than this RFP. Not on your spreadsheet is the fact that Highlands Ranch has contracted with Waste Connections for significantly lower rates than have been proposed to Inglewood. While the survey is one of the best designed I've seen out of the city, it is still not completely transparent, but the results do seem to be that there is a tie between whether citizens want this or not. Most recycling single stream is placed in landfills due to breakage and contamination, and requiring each household to pay for recycling will double the number of trucks on the street, as recycling requires a separate type of truck. Stopping at each house on each street will increase gas usage and pollution if this is a reason, because the stopping and starting at each house increases the time on the street and is known to increase gas. Many of us do recycle intelligently, which means not paying for recycling that doesn't happen. There are numerous items that no trash collector will pick up for recycling, but there are a number of places we can go and we can accomplish a lot more recycling by learning about these companies. One is the Alliance Center or Ridwell, and they do take these common items fairly extensively. This is not ready for council to decide, nor should council be deciding this. It is not a necessary endeavor. It is unnecessary and unconstitutional to force people to pay for something they don't need or use, or give up their cheaper services and choices and existing contracts for lesser services at increased cost and add to their utility bills, which are already unfair and costly. In no way is this proposal of benefit to any of the 9,360 single-family households, but it is a gift to single hauler and a burden on those households. We have a right to our property and we have individual rights.
That's 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chavez. Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. There's also a hand raised by Judy Dunlop. Ms. Dunlop, would you like to address the committee?
Yes, thank you.
Please go ahead.
I also live, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I live in District 1. I had a question with regard to the survey. I understood that from some neighbors at the early part of the survey when it went out, there was not a request for a zip code. And yet when I took it, and that's kind of a related question, you had stated that it was going to be cut off on the 14th. And yet people were still accessing it, and I was able to access it. I think it was like the 18th or 19th. There was a zip code request in there. So I'm wondering with regard to the results, and perhaps, I'll be enlightened by what you report, but could you tell if someone took it more than once? And I also have a question with regard to whoever the administrator was on the doing the survey. If you could edit it, if there was no place for zip code at the beginning, and once it went out to the public, then someone edited it back in or in for the first time, how you would be able to get an accurate reading on the survey results. And then I just had a comment with regard to alley pickup. I get trash service in the alley. I just recently wanted to try recycling. It's waste services, so I'm have a low rate, but I cannot get it picked up in the alley. I heard from the last meeting that some neighborhoods that have an alley get it in the alley, trash and recycling. So I'm just kind of curious with regard to this proposal. We're now all of a sudden, as citizens, going to be able to tell the trash hauling company what we want when it was very arbitrary. And over the last probably 5 or 6 years, when the services started deciding they didn't want to pick up in the alley, we had no choice. And we were told we would lose our service and then had to find another carrier. So I'm just wondering how that's going to be addressed. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Does anyone else who is attending wish to address the committee?
Are you asking for the panelists to?
No, this is the public comment
Okay.
portion. So we're still open to public. There's 4 other people who are listed as attendees without their hands raised that if you would like to say something, now is the time. Okay. Then we will. The one other thing in the public comments is the email that's linked in here, but that was from C. Ann Dickerson, and she basically just read it to us. So I'm not going to bring up any other points from that. And just to, since there's useful information of what they've asked, you know, some of those questions, I'll go ahead and respond, you know, based on facts around those. And if anyone else on the committee wants to add to that, just raise your hand. As far as the question about the fees, my understanding is that the difference from the about $2 admin fee to the total fees listed as possible cost would be going directly to the hauler. The survey per citizen, that the surveys were not tied to citizens in any technical way. Technically, anyone could have filled out the survey from anywhere as many times as they wanted. There was nothing to stop people from filling out the survey over and over. There was nothing to stop people who are not households in Inglewood from filling out the survey. So that's something that, you know, we just, that is a technical fact about how the survey was conducted. And then in regard to the alley question, we are aware of what you asked about, and that's all been addressed in our meetings. And in the request for proposal that we put out, it was requested that alley service be provided, or alley or curb, at the household discretion for waste and for recycling, although neither of the proposals satisfied that. And that was in the details about that were in the description in the beginning of the survey. And I'm sure if you have more questions about that, that's all in the talk and trash details and in our meeting details. And Director DeAndrea would probably, or if you send emails to her, she can answer those directly as well if there's anything that's not clear. Let's close unless anyone else from the public raise their hand. Nope. All right, we'll close the public hearing and move into our old business. In our last meeting, we didn't get to where the administrative fee memo and the city services summaries documents that had been included. So we've got those here to review those. If any of the committee members have any questions on those, et cetera, or anything to discuss. Director DeAndrea, do you want to go over those?
Yeah, and if I could, City Manager Lewis has a couple comments to make, and he can only stay on for a short time. So could we allow him to just make a few comments to the group?
Sure, go ahead, City Manager Lewis.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that, Chairperson Green. Good to be with you tonight, and I will be on for a bit, but thank you for the courtesy to make a few comments. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all of you who have been serving on this committee for many, many months. You know, it's a lot of time out of your schedule. It's a lot of effort. And I know that all of you have worked really, really hard. I've read a lot of the notes. I've listened to a couple of meetings, and just really appreciate the spirit in which you are trying to come to consensus, or at least a recommendation. You know, this is a difficult issue. It's one that the council, I think, strategically and correctly made sure that we had representation from both sides, both kind of for and against, if you will, on single hauler, and made sure that we had representation from folks on the committee. And so, you know, while that makes it more difficult sometimes, I think it's really what makes, you know, the process be credible and successful. And so I just really appreciate that you've done that. You know, the other issue is you've been meeting during COVID. You've been almost entirely, if not entirely, remote for most of this time. And that's really hard, not to be face to face, not to see each other, not to get those nonverbals. But I really appreciate that you've been able to stick with it. Those of you that are on the call, and just thank you for your service. Just wanted to also update you on the fact that council has asked for this to be on the April 18th meeting. So we would like to have a recommendation from you all no later than April 11th. That is to let us get that information into the agenda packet, which has to go out the preceding week of the council meeting. And so we really are on a pretty short deadline to get that April 11th deadline met, so we can get your recommendation, if you will. And I'd just like to make a comment on that. We know there's not going to be consensus. I've worked on lots of committees, citizen boards, and realized that we weren't going to be able to get to consensus. But if there is a way to, have, a majority opinion, I think we absolutely would want to have a dissenting opinion. If sometimes that's called a minority report. And so I think that would be a really great thing to have for City Council to have, both a recommendation plus potentially a dissenting memo or paper that would kind of explain why folks may not feel the way that the majority does. So we're really thankful again for your service on that. Finally, I just would encourage you all, finish strong. You're almost there. No matter what council decides to do, the pressure is really on them. You all have been an invaluable resource for information, asking questions, having research done. I want to thank Director DeAndre for doing an amazing job of providing in a lot of information to this committee throughout the process. This has been other duties as assigned, and it's really been a lot of work on her part. But I want to thank you all for asking the tough questions and really digging into the RFP and all the good work that you've done. And so just please continue to be respectful of each other like you have been, and just recognize that your service is appreciated. And I think I can speak for all of staff to say thank you for all the hard work that you've done. So I hope you have a good meeting, and I'll be online for the next hour or so. Thank you, Chairman Green.
Thank you, City Manager Lewis.
Chair Green, I'm sorry to interrupt, but does everyone have, I don't see where I can raise my hand.
You don't?
No. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I see nothing at the bottom of my screen that indicates I can raise my hand.
Does everyone else have it or not?
Yeah.
Have it. Yeah.
Everybody else has
Member
it?
Brown, drag your cursor to the bottom of the screen. Does it pop up?
No. It just says mute, start video, participants, Q&A, chat, share screen, apps, more.
Oh,
Okay,
I've
well
got a
then
raised hand after the share screen, to the right of share screen.
Pardon
you're
me?
just gonna, Member Brown, just when there's a moment to speak, like try not to speak over anyone, just tell me that you want to speak, and then I'll treat that as a raised hand.
Okay, I'm sorry. Did you say, Director DeAndre, there's a place for me to try to find it? By apps, did you say?
No, I said on mine, I see all those things that you just listed at the bottom. So Q&A, chat, share screen, and then to the right of share screen is where I have my raised hand on mine.
All right, I would
Okay.
like to not take up more time on this, so please just speak up when you need to let me know that your hand is raised, because
Okay.
it's not happening. We've already had a whole bunch of time be taken up. And unfortunately, some of what was just, personally, in response to what City Manager Lewis just said, I would like to reject this pro against boiling down without any nuance perspective. As far as I know, and I read all of the bios of everyone, I mean, certainly some of the people who are on this committee have from the beginning, regardless of cost, service levels, what citizens want or not, have been for going to single hauler regardless of details, but I know that several of us have cared about the nuance of what that means and what those terms are. And it's not just for or against. I'm certainly not just for or against. I've been very clear all along that it's all about if the city was to do this, it should be utilizing the leverage of such a large contract to get a deal that's a good deal for the citizens that include the terms that the citizens care about. So I don't see this as just a for or against. I see it as a very nuanced, important topic that matters to a large portion of the citizens of Inglewood. All right, Director DeAndrea, let's please address the admin fee memo.
Just trying to call it up here. 1 second, please.
Member Brinker, do you have a question about the admin fee memo?
Related, I was hoping to see if, given City Manager Lewis's comment, if we could try to make this our last meeting for this group in order to get our recommendations to City Council before their study session. And if so, I'd like to see if we could make the discussion of this memo and the survey results rather short so we can still have plenty of time to discuss our final recommendations.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on these taking long. As far as like whether this is our last meeting and we're done, I would, I can stay late if it takes it. And I'm, I still am not a fan of the aggressive pressure that's, arbitrary and never made any sense about, pushing to a completion without taking the time to do our best on behalf of what citizens care about. But we've also done everything we could to move this along as quick as we can, and I'm going to continue to do that. But this, I believe there were questions about it, and so I wanted to make sure and address it since we didn't get to it last time.
All right, so if you recall, I had prepared a memo. We were always talking about the $2 approximate per month per residence. And this memo originally showed my calculation. And what I've done here is update that because I think in talking internally with other staff is that we don't think that we need to, at least to start with, do this part-time code enforcement officer. So it still shows a full-time program coordinator and 1 full-time billing specialist, and you see the cost there. But I've crossed out the code enforcement person. And then we would still have, and as well as the vehicle. So those are the personnel costs from up above. We crossed out the vehicle that would be needed for that code enforcement person. And we kept in the communications because that was a cost that would be on the city. We did not include that in the RFP cost. So this gets to a new dollar amount of that administrative fee of $1.72. So it brings it down. Basically, we were, I think, right at $2 or $2.03 down to that $1.72. And again, that was based on the 9,360 households. And just knowing what we feel at this time is what it would take to implement the program and how we get to that $1.72 calculation. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I had a question about why we would need a full-time billing specialist. I mean, I understand that in the lead up, there would be some work to integrate, should this go forward and we have a hauler, there's going to be integration work to get everything automated. But once it's automated and tied in, I really don't understand why. I mean, really, we would need 2 full-time people, especially considering Lafayette has none and Golden has 1, and it should be an automated thing. And the hauler is responsible for all incoming phone, email, web form, et cetera, requests.
Yeah, I think the intent is that in talking with our utility billing staff right now is that they cannot handle those additional calls. And so we would need another billing specialist to handle just the calls related to garbage. obviously they'd be integrated and cross-trained to answer any questions, but they do not feel that they could accommodate that even with a part-time person, that we would need a full-time billing specialist to handle those a number of calls. We may even need more, as we ramp up. So yes, the calls are supposed to go to directly to the hauler, but as we know, people just tend to call the city. So it's a city program, I'm gonna call the city, and then we need to then still direct them to that, if it's a non-billing question, to the waste hauler. So there is a fair amount of that as well. So we still feel that both full-time positions are required.
Member Brown?
Yeah, I also don't understand why we need 2 full-time people for this. I mean, the city, did they not just buy a $1.2 million computer from Canada? I thought that was supposed to help with this kind of billing. So I'm not sure why, and I think these salaries are extremely, I don't know. I just don't feel good about paying this type of money for 2 people. And I
Yeah,
would like to
again,
say what
it's-
that computer was for, please.
Yeah, they did upgrade the utility billing system. That was done in conjunction with going to the monthly billing system with the intent of making it more streamlined. And also, I believe, being able to pay your bill online, which I don't know if that was an option beforehand. But I still think the number of phone calls that we get, at least from the utility billing staff again, or emails, they feel would justify another full-time person answering those calls.
Thank you. Member Brinker, did you raise your hand? I thought I saw it up.
Nope, that was
Oh,
from
okay.
before.
Oh, okay, thank you. Any other questions for Director DeAndrea on this? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to that other one. Which was the city services summary.
Yeah. So that I had done that like early on. If you recall, I had provided a spreadsheet of the different what different other cities are charging. And so that was just an update of that, so that we went back and basically looked at all the different, sorry, cannot find it. There it is. So we went back and basically updated that. Here it is. As usual, I have too many things open on my desktop. So I'll zoom in a little bit. So again, I think early on in the process, we provided this to you, is just the cities, how they are currently providing service. So for example, Loveland has a single hauler contracted through the city, the type of program it is, what services they offer. And then what we've basically done is update those rates so that you can get a more comparison of 2021 dollar amounts. Because this, I believe I created this in 2019. And as you can see, as you go further down here, some municipalities, still have open subscription. We haven't updated Arvada, which has recently gone to the single hauler. But everything else should be more up to date in terms of the cost, just as a comparison.
Thank you. Did anyone have any questions on this? Member Brown? You're muted.
Sorry about that. When I read up on Arvada, I was reading that they had a chance to opt out the first year, but pay an administrative fee. Did you know that?
Yes, that's the way they structured their program, was that you could opt out from the very beginning.
So, but we aren't able to do that, correct?
I think that we as a committee, or you all as a committee decided not to do that, that you, to get basically a base price where it would be the most efficient possible, was to have everybody opt in or be part of the service the first year, at least try it out, and then for the second year, be able to opt out. But that is not a requirement per se by state statute or anything.
But
Right.
I was not for that.
Correct,
Right,
but
but-
it was a vote of the
Okay.
group.
Yeah, that was what went into the RFP, member Brown, is that the structure of the opt-out was that nobody could opt out for the first year and that they would be able to after the first year. And then what we got in the two proposals was Waste Management accepted that with their caveat of, what was it? If 10% opt out, then they can renegotiate.
Correct, yeah.
I
And
do
then-
understand,
then-
Chair Green. I was just
Okay.
I was just making a comment. I understand the RFP, but thank you.
And then just to finish that thought, the other Republic rejected the opt-out. So they're saying, no, even if someone opted out, they would still have to pay the full amount. Member Brinker?
It was my understanding that for Arvada, if you opted out, you still had to pay their base rate.
I believe it's $5 in some sense, Member Brinker, that you have to pay if you opt out.
So that's more than what we put in our RFP then. Since
Correct.
our RFP was the admin fee would be the opt-out cost, which, as Director DeAndrea just went through, is, at this point under $2.
But you could also get a cheaper rate than what we're offering here. And that's why people took it in Arvada. So just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone else have anything else on this city comparison? Okay, thank you, Director DeAndrea, on that. All right, so now we've got the survey, which one thing, I don't know if this was obvious to everybody in the agenda, there's 2 links for the survey results. One is the full Excel spreadsheet, which includes all of the write-in information, since so many of the questions allowed for people to specify please explains or others, etc. The only way to access all of that content is going through the Excel spreadsheet itself, which is the first link in the agenda, and that is available to everybody in the public. If you do click on that, it'll pull an Excel file and you can see what Director DeAndrea has on the screen right now, which is the full content of the survey responses. And then, like, you can see there what she has on the screen. One line across there is one response, and then there's a column for every question or write-in. And then just as a note for anyone wanting to peruse this data, those drop downs at the column headers, you can sort all of the responses, like A to Z by the various responses, et cetera. Just so, because I don't think it's very common that the city puts out Excel files like this. So not all citizens might be as familiar with navigating this kind of data, but there's a lot of information in there. And I assume that everyone on the committee took the time to go through that, because the summary does not include any of the comments, but the summary is certainly very useful for looking at the main answers. So I would suggest that we address the main summary and just kind of look through it and note anything that people want to point out. I mean, I have some points that I would like to address, and I'd like to give everyone a chance to note anything that they would like to point out. And then I think what we can do is start to construct the points that we might want to communicate to city council in our recommendation. Or if someone else has a different suggestion on how to address this, I'm certainly open to that. I mean, one way to do it would be to just start making a bullet list of what we want to put into our recommendation to city council, and then reference the survey results as we talk through all of it. I mean, that would be another way to move through this. Does anyone have any other suggestions or ideas, or lean towards one of those or the other? Member Brinker?
Yeah, thanks. I was leaning towards opening up the discussion to the committee for our overall reactions and impressions of the citizen survey, especially compared to our previous impressions, what jumped out at us, what we think is especially notable. And then I have a handful of suggestions for recommendations that maybe we could consider as a package as we go along. And I put those in a slide. So maybe when we get there, I might be allowed to screen share a single slide with some of those recommendation ideas.
Okay. I think that's a good idea. The first part of that, let's start with that. Anything anyone wants to point out as observations from the results of the survey, or if anyone wants to like specifically look at a part of the survey and recognize that and talk about that, we could do that too, rather than like going through the whole thing, because we do have somewhat limited time to try and accomplish what city council is asking for. Anybody want to start? Member Kawanabe?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I took a look at the survey, and it looks like, and maybe that's where we should start. Are we a majority that is leaning towards this, or a majority that is against this, right? And from what I'm seeing is a slight majority that is moving towards a single hauler. So I think that would be the primary point that we would want to start this conversation, and then kind of whittle down from there. The other thing that I would want to look at is kind of the top reasons why folks are wanting to move to the single hauler, just so that can be our kind of North Star in the direction we want to move.
That's interesting. My impression was the opposite from the data, that we've got 61.9 very satisfied with current provider, 61.9% very or satisfied with current provider, 63% currently have yard waste included, and that's not even an option on either of the proposals that didn't satisfy the RFP.
But overall, the majority was moving towards single hauler, correct?
That's not what I got. Of the guest book entries, 3 were for as stated, 8 were against, period. 7 were against unless terms improved. 2 were uneligible since they were apartment complex people. And if you go through all of the entries, there's massive concern about the alley service and why that's so important. And we know that one of the proposals satisfies that and one doesn't. And then we had 62.7% pushing for wanting it on the ballot, although I think that's while that's something to certainly consider, since that was input that came in from this, I think all of us may want to express to city council that a single yes or no type question on the ballot wouldn't lend itself well to the nuance of the terms that matter to actually satisfy what matters to citizens. Member Brinker?
Thanks. Yeah, that was kind of a lot that you both forward all at once, but my impressions lined up with Member Kawanabe's about the overall direction, slightly in favor of moving towards a single hauler. When I looked at the pie chart, it said 41% in favor, 37% not, and 22% neutral. So I was
to which question?
Towards the very end. Given if it had the option for an opt-out and a $2 admin fee, would you be in favor of a move towards single hauler? So keep going. It was almost the last question. Keep going. Nope, up three. Stop there. If there was an option to opt out of the program with a $2 per month administrative fee, would you be supportive of a change to one service provider for the city? And I can't see the numbers, the legend there, but I think it was almost 41% in the green in favor, and 22% that would be neutral. So okay with it.
Well, you could say
So
neutrals. You could take
put,
neutral in
yeah,
either
exactly.
direction.
You could put neutral in either.
So the yes and
category,
the no are slightly, they're pretty close to each other, but it also, we have a lot of data about the nuance of what it makes, and that's if there's a $2 opt out, and that's all of these other things that people have expressed strong concern with, like the fact that the third most important issue was yard waste included, which was way beyond large item pickup mattering to people. There's there's options for the city to negotiate with both the potential haulers to get a better deal. Member Brown?
Yeah, I'm seeing this chart differently, I guess, because it seems to me that the majority are just fine with what they have already.
Yeah, that was 61.9% very or satisfied with current provider.
Right. So I guess we all read this differently, but that's what I got out of this chart.
Member Kwanabe?
So that one's taken out of context, I believe, because it didn't actually do a comparison of if it was a single hauler. So the question wasn't whether or not you would move away from yours. Like I would say I wasn't satisfied with mine, but I would still prefer to move to a single hauler.
Member
Yeah, that's how I
Brown?
interpreted that too.
Did you have something else, Member Brown? And thanks, Member Kwanabe, sorry. Member Brown, your hand is raised. You're also on mute.
I'm sorry. I'm having problems with this raise and lower hand, so I'm going to lower my hand.
Okay. All right, so when we take into account, I can see where Member Brinker and Member Kwanabe see it as leaning towards single hauler, and I would hope that you would also recognize what at least Member Brown and I see it as lean, pretty more evenly, as well as with a lot of nuance that matters. I mean, there's huge need for alley service, as we always knew. One thing I was disappointed about the survey is that I received the postcard, or not the survey so much, but the public input. I received the postcard on a Monday. The first virtual meeting was on the next night, Tuesday, which, by the way, Director DeAndrea, how many people attended the virtual meeting?
Michelle can chime in too. I want to say maybe 15-ish.
Okay. And then, so after receiving the postcard on a Monday, the two public input meetings were the following day for the virtual one, and then 2 days later on Thursday for the in-person one. And there were only 13 people there, 4 of whom were current or former members of this committee. And I even talked to some of the people who did attend, and some of them didn't even know, except that they're someone who used to work for the city let them know. So I was disappointed in the notice for public input, especially considering when we started this project, before our committee even convened and the city had 3 public meetings, each one of those was attended by hundreds of people. We know that the citizens care about this, and I think that they were not necessarily informed in time to participate in the new public forums. Although I'm glad, Director DeAndrea, that you extended the time on the survey for people to be able to respond to that longer. Member Brown?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was disappointed too, and I was very disappointed that the March 10th meeting wasn't recorded. Because at the beginning of that meeting, Director DeAndrea, you said it was going to be recorded.
Well, just to clarify, so I said that we did record the March 8th one and we weren't going to record that for the March 10th because it was basically the same content that was going to be shared in my PowerPoint presentation. And then Business Support Specialist Chavez did take note of all the questions that were raised at the March 10th meeting. And then that was combined, the questions from both sessions were combined together in an FAQ, which is on the Englewood Engaged website now.
Okay, myself personally, I wish the public had been given more notice because when I told people I attended, they said they could not find that anywhere. They looked on the calendar and didn't see the March 8th or 10th meeting up there on the March calendar.
Oh, you mean on the meeting portal calendar, Member Brown?
Yes.
I did notice that as well, Director DeAndrea. The virtual and public meetings were not listed on the main Englewood meeting portal calendar, which is where people are used to looking to see about, citizen engagement.
Yeah, we can, yes, you mean like the iCompass portal where you guys would go to look for our citizen committee meetings?
Yeah.
Yeah, we typically don't do public meetings on those. So we do have our board and commissions are on there, city council meetings, obviously, but we typically do not put public meetings on there. That's something we can consider. But like if we had a project meeting, let's say an informational meeting for, a roadway project, we would not put it on iCompass typically. It would go on the Englewood Engage page as well with a postcard or other mailing. But it's something we can
Yeah,
consider.
I mean, I think that that's a worthy suggestion because citizens who are engaged are used to looking at that calendar to see what all is going on. I think more
Sure.
people would have been informed if it had been listed there. Member
Okay.
Brinker?
I think that's a great suggestion for the future and definitely something the city should do. And for our purposes here, given that we cannot delay it and have another public meeting with another month of notice, it doesn't really seem to be an option. And given that I think we had really broad participation in the survey, we should still go forward with what information we got in the survey. And when you asked a little bit earlier about our initial impressions, some things I noted down is that it's clear the community is divided on this, both philosophically and in terms of the details. So I think it's good we have a representation on the committee in that respect to dive into the details like you were saying before, Chair Green. I got that alley pickup is very important to some residents, but not all, which I think is probably almost directly correlated to how difficult it is for certain residents to get a bin to their street as opposed to their alley. If they have a very steep driveway or a lot of stairs, then they probably would mark alley service as very important. And if it's, 6 1 half dozen the other, they probably don't care. So that was my impression of alley service, which I think might feed into our recommendations, and we could perhaps be more nuanced there. I got, which we all probably knew from the very beginning, that cost is a very important concern to residents. And that made me think we'll need to take a closer look in our recommendations on price reduction and simplicity. We know that we can't get everything we want. We kind of put our gigantic wish list into the RFP, but we might need to trim it down in order to meet that demand for a price reduction. So costs seem to be the highest concern, followed by service reliability and then yard waste. People had a whole mix of prices that they're paying. That was just all over the board. A large item pickup seemed to be fairly split, half and half. I think about a little over 50% said it was important to them. As far as the providers, the first provider was split down the middle. The second provider had the majority fine with it. I guess, again, that depends where you put the neutral.
I didn't understand that one, Member Brinker.
Sorry, one provider, it said, are you in favor of this approach? And it was fairly split down the middle. The second
Which question are
provider,
you talking about?
that what's up on the screen is way too tiny for me to
Yeah.
see, so I can't see, but it laid
Can you
out,
close the
there were-
bookmarks? And oh, there you go. Zoom it. There you go.
Okay, did not include alley service, but did include large item pickup. So that one, scroll down, looked about half and half, depending where you put the neutral. And I was kind of putting neutral in my head as okay with it, meaning that they wouldn't throw a fit about it, but we could debate that. And that's as opposed to the next question, which got wider support, again, if you count the neutral. And I took that difference to be the importance of alley service, because that was the main difference between them. But that is just my impression, and I realized that you can interpret this in a lot of different ways. But
Will you
if we're
please, when
just,
you, just real quick, Director
Mhm.
DeAndrea, when you pause on these, will you please include the legend so we can see the legend? Okay, I mean, it'd be nice to see the question and the legend. Can you go full screen and get rid of your surrounding stuff? It's just frustrating to not know what we're looking at. Sorry, Member Brinker, I just wanted to be
Mhm.
able. And then that's too small because we can't read it. It's got to be zoomed, but we need. All right, yeah. we
Sorry,
just-
that's, I think the best I can do. I don't
Mhm.
know how to get rid of this top stuff up here.
right, so I guess the point is that we had a question specifically addressing the RFP responses, first one respondent and then the other respondent. And when I compared them, the one that did have alley service seemed to be slightly more favorable than the one that did not.
Yeah, I mean, the way
Um,
I looked at that same thing, Member Brinker, was
Mhm.
48.2% strongly somewhat against without alley, 42.8 strongly somewhat against with alley, no large item.
Okay, can you repeat that?
So 48.2% strongly somewhat against the proposal
Mhm.
cost without alley. I was
Mhm.
avoiding including neutral because I don't think it's fair to include neutral in one way
Yeah,
or the
that's
other.
fair. Yeah, that's fair.
And then 42.8% strongly somewhat against the proposal cost with alley, no large item.
Okay. And then the last thing I noted just in general impressions was a continued demand for apartment recycling and a lot of comments still coming in about composting. And we've known all those all along. So then again, when I kind of summarized my initial impressions, I got that we'd need to focus on simplicity and price reduction if this is a program that we want to recommend the city pursue.
Thank you.
And that's it for my initial reactions from the survey. And then I put together a few of my thoughts on recommendations that we could go through after we talk through
Yeah,
again overall.
I'll certainly allow you to present that. Thank you. A couple other points that I noticed was of those not currently recycling, 60% of them are paying less than any of the proposals. So that was one thing that I thought was worth pointing out, because we know that's probably going to be a lot of the elderly, a lot of the fixed income, you know, the people who are not currently recycling are, you know, more than 60% are paying less than, you know, what any of the proposals are, because they're at, if you add it up, like the proposals, assuming the proposals like 27 or whatever, the amount that they're paying is those numbers that are well below that. So I think that that's an important thing to be aware of, because now we're going to be, if this were to go forward, we'd be forcing everyone to have recycling. Well, not everyone, because not apartments and not businesses, which has been brought up as an unfair thing. But that's a major jump in what they're currently paying. And then a couple other things I noticed was 45.9% very somewhat important for waste alley service. And then I don't know if anyone else read through the comments regarding that, but you know, a big part of it is like, that's what the alleys are for. People talked about difficulty moving bins, not wanting to have the stink of trash or recycling in front of their house. They can't, obviously we all know that there's a lot of parts of Inglewood where you can't even get the bins from the front to the back unless you go all the way to the end of the block, down the side, and then up the alley. So difficult terrain, a lot of mentions of elderly, disability, unsightly, convenience, keeping the streets clean. A lot of mention around parking is already difficult, where having the bins on the curb makes that even more difficult, especially as density is increasing. These are just some of the notes that I made of all the comments that were, you know, strongly about the need for alley. Member Borman, or Vice Chair Borman, sorry.
That's all right. So I was going back to the price amounts, and I looked at comparing garbage and recycling to garbage and recycling, but it looked like about 65% of people would be paying less with hopefully our proposal than they do pay now. And actually, I just got a 17% increase in my waste management bill just starting this month. So my guess is that, you know, it's coming for everybody at some point soon here as well. And so, you know, I know you kind of compared, Chair Green, you compared garbage to people who are going to get garbage and recycling in the future. And I tried to, I guess, compare apples to apples, but I know not everybody's going to be recycling, but I sure hope that everybody learns how to do it. And I think it is a worthwhile thing for our committee to try and continue to push for. And that's it.
Thanks, Vice Chair Borman. And Member Kawanabe.
I had a couple of points on the cost comment. I think one, separately, when we're doing a comparison of the cost of these other communities, it's good to think about when they sign their contracts and the terms that they put in, right? Because a lot of these were established pre-pandemic, which they're in a completely different environment and they're under completely different variables that are put into those calculations, and they were probably locked into a max increase, right? And in addition to that, Vice Chairman Borman, 'tis the season. I got my update too as well this last week, and it went up 150% actually. So we were paying much less before, and then I talked to Waste Management, and it was like $400 and something, or $425 a year, and then Waste Connections. If I was to cancel service, they would not take new customers on. So that tells me that they are already on a labor shortage. And so we're going to probably look at service issues that are happening there. But along with Dane, I think we're going to see a lot of people have cost increases regardless of who they're with.
Same here. Ours went up a lot too in the past 2 months.
Let's please stick with the hands. Member Brown.
Well, I just recently heard from an acquaintance, it's not in my district, but she just signed a 2-year contract with Waste Services just this, like 2 weeks ago for $17 a month. So I don't know why people's costs are going up when you can sign with Waste Services and get better service for $17 a month.
Thank
And
you, member.
then
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, Director DeAndrea, can you bring this slide to where the bars are?
Yeah.
Please, thank
That
you.
one?
Yes, I just noticed here that on this one, well, it's kind of blocky now, but the orange bar indicates. Okay, the orange bar indicates, let's see here, cost.
Cost, yeah.
And then the yellow bar indicates cost. And I was just wondering why there were 2 bars on cost, because if you put those together, that's a pretty good amount of people saying cost is number 1.
It's a good
Yeah,
point.
thanks for pointing that out, Member Brown. It's so important we put it in twice. It was an oversight on when we put the bullets in. So there were 2 options, 2 bullets or 2 what they call radio buttons that you could pick for cost. So, you know, some people may have tapped it twice, some may have only tapped it once. But I think whether you combine them or even individually, even if we only look at the orange one, it's as you said, it's a very important subject and very important factor. But that was an oversight on staff's part.
Okay, so would you say, Director, that you've got 1281 and then 655? Would you combine those 2 figures?
It's hard to say. I think we could go back through that spreadsheet to see if people listed it twice and we could see whether that was a single response or a double response. I could try and do that if you wanted me to.
Okay. And then may I just make one more comment? Is I don't know how many of you listened to the last city council meeting where there were quite a few speakers. I think there were about 15, and not one was in favor of single hauler trash. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, member Brown. Member Brinker.
I noticed the same thing about cost being repeated, and I don't think you can add those 2 numbers together, because some people might have marked one, some people might have marked the other, but some people might have marked both. So mathematically, we can't really discern that right off the bat, although we can still take the general point that cost is the most important issue.
Yeah, I mean, that's clear. If they were 2 that weren't the tallest, then that would be more important data to like figure out what happened. But I agree. I mean, it's clear that cost is the number 1 issue, even if we don't combine those or we take a third of it or whatever the actual, difference was. So we all know cost has been identified as the most important. And then in regard to the what people are paying, I mean, Member Brown's point is pretty strong. The fact is you can call Waste Services right now and get $17 trash or $22 trash and recycling. My neighbor just signed up as well. So that is available, and it's provided by a Waste Service. And for people to not, switch to that, make that phone call, that's choosing to not get a, as good a deal as is available. So, I mean, people can choose to pay more than they need to for things, but that doesn't mean that the people who do care about cost, which we see as the number 1 issue based on the respondents, that, they should be, pushed into something that's not a reasonable cost, because a lot of people don't seem to care about cost by paying for, services that are overpriced and not just switching, which is what you get when you have competition. And when you have new competition moving in, like Little Dumpsters is adding, more support to Inglewood right now. All right. Any other points that anyone wants to bring up, point out regarding the overall survey results? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Member Brinker.
Yeah, one more comment on the cost discussion. We never got a clear answer on exactly what waste services is cutting from waste management overall service package in order to offer reduced costs. We don't know if they have longer wait times if you call on hold, or if they have less email support or chat support or any of that. We just know that they handle all of the customer inquiries and billing, but we really don't know beyond that the level of services that allows them to use waste management in every other regard, but still offer their own kind of customer facing side, right?
Well, I mean, obviously this is anecdotal, but one of the things we've had anecdotally was former member Frazier's anecdote about how miserable it was to deal with waste management for his wife, who spent like a cumulative like 3 hours on the phone with them. And then I'm someone who's had waste services for 2 years now. And when I've called, they've answered, and I've never had a missed pickup. I've never had a missed anything. It's alley service for waste and curb for recycling. Waste management includes bundled branches, includes bags of yard waste. It's the full deal. I haven't had any issue at
That's
all.
great. Oh, good. That's great to hear.
All right, so if there's no more like high level, let's see, let me make sure I don't have any more. I wanted to note that 35.3% of the service is currently provided by Waste Connections, which didn't even respond to the RFP, which we never really got an answer as to why. Did we, Director DeAndrea?
No, I had never heard why they pulled out. They participated in the pre-proposal meeting, but then decided not to. I think Little Dumpsters did too, and then decided not to submit a proposal.
Okay, Member Quanabe?
Waste Connections is who we have, and they're not taking on new customers. My guess is that they just don't have the labor to support it.
Okay, did you ask them or anything? Do you know, like, is that just speculation?
They said that they were over their tonnage to pick up in the area, and they were not taking any new customers.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Especially because we know that like Little Dumpsters is currently expanding in the area. So it's interesting. I wonder why, because Waste Connections is huge. They're one of the two big public ones.
Totally. And a majority of the current servicer, or one of the big majorities.
Yeah, 35.3% said they currently have them. And then I said it earlier, but I think this is really important. 63% of respondents have included at no extra cost yard waste. And that was the third top concern by everyone as well. And that's not included in either of the proposals as they stand. All right. I would suggest that before we go to your presentation conglomeration, Member Brinker, let's give everyone a chance to like bring up points that we might want to include in what we communicate to City Council. You know, I mean, let's just talk about it for a minute. So what I think, you know, like what I would suggest is that we say, you know, we make sure they're clear on the story. I'm sure most of them are, but there are some new City Council members who haven't been around the whole time to know the whole story. We convened after an RFP was put out. We determined that the RFP that was put out didn't represent the concerns of citizens based on the input from the first round of citizen input. And we recommended that City Council reject the original RFP, let us make a new one. We went through that. We, as we all know, you know, battled it out to get what ended up in the RFP. Some things didn't get in there that, you know, I still think are really important, but, you know, was outvoted. And And now we've seen that, you know, it is an important thing. It's the number 3 most important thing, the yard waste thing. And then we found out that the proposals that came back don't satisfy the requirements of the terms that we came to, which, you know, obviously includes what we came up with. And so, you know, one reason that I don't see the pressure that has been expressed upon us so much is that since neither proposal satisfied the terms of the request for proposal, anything like if the city was to move forward with one of these, it's a whole new deal. It's not based on the request for proposal because the request for proposal hasn't been satisfied. So regardless, it's going to be some different negotiation than what the request for proposal defined. And I would suggest that the city take into account what the citizens have expressed, costs, you know, reliability, which I think falls into the customer service aspects that we've included in the RFP, which those were not necessarily, there's some nuance missing in their proposals, but we all know what we included and the detail. You know, the primary thing about citizens should be able to submit a request for whatever they need without having to wait on a phone or wait for a chat or actively wait. They should be able to submit and then have a response come back within whatever we said, 1 or 2 business days. So we know that that would be better for citizens than what they currently have. The interest, like my perception is the interest in large item pickup is significantly lower than the interest in yard waste, and large item pickup is not something that anyone currently has. And yard waste is something that 63% of citizens do currently have. So I would think that one thing we could recommend to city council is if they were to consider going for this, to negotiate and see if they could get a better deal by swapping yard waste, which is what more people care about, for large item pickup, as well as push on waste management to say, look, we have to have alley service as an option, and push on Republic to say, look, we have to have an opt-out after the first year as an option, and suggest the structure that waste management said with the, you know, the 10% opt out, they can renegotiate and use the power of the weight of the leverage of such a large contract to negotiate with the companies directly to get what citizens care about. I mean, that's the gist of what I would like to recommend to city council.
Chair Green, this.
Go ahead, Member Brown.
Sorry, I can't raise my hand, but I guess when we do different screens, the raise hand goes off my screen. But my perspective is that we are not fulfilling what most of the citizens want here with this RFP. Number one is price. Why would you pay the price that we currently are, these trash haulers are giving us, when you can get it for much cheaper? It's cheaper and it's better service. The second point is people wanted alley service. Are we going to give that to them? I don't know. Doesn't look like it unless we go with Republic for all alleys. And then the third piece of information that we've received is that people do want to be able to put out bags for their leaves, their branches, whatever the case may be. And we're not fulfilling that either with this RFP. So I think the 3 main points that citizens want, that the survey shows, we're not giving it to them. So I'm going to mute myself, but that's my perspective on this.
Anybody else want to talk gist, concepts, respond to what either of us have said? Vice Chair Borman?
Yeah, so, you know, I still think it's worthwhile for us to move forward with at least a recommendation to City Council for them to negotiate, kind of like you talked about, Chair Green. I do still think there's got to be a way for the city to negotiate on the cost. And I do think that that's important, but I also think that the recycling is an important thing for everybody to get behind. And I think, you know, I don't know, I hope that they'll still be able to bring it down by trying to negotiate between city staff and a couple of the haulers, maybe even some of the other ones. I looked at the service reliability and the customer service as something that I hope this RFP would really satisfy, especially with going with a single hauler, because hopefully that way they have penalties, obviously, if they don't satisfy the customer service and the reliability. And so I think that's another big push towards at least recommending it to council. And I definitely understand the yard waste. And again, I think maybe that's something that, again, we should allow city staff and council to negotiate with the haulers, maybe instead of the large item. I'm okay with that for sure in terms of it. And otherwise, you know, the one last thing I would just say is, you know, we have an alleyway. When it's raining, when it's snowing, it's getting torn up all the time. We're kind of on an incline. And so when we have Republic and Waste Management, and I think we have one other that goes down the alley as well, you know, we've got some pretty deep ruts. So one of the reasons that I'm hoping for a single hauler is actually to just keep my alleyway in better shape. So I think that's my input as far as, you know, I would generally recommend us saying to city council, we should negotiate, and I hope that they'll actually vote on it, because I'm afraid if we have a citizen vote, we'll get locked into some, like you said, loss of nuance, Chair Green, where I think it's a real challenge to make changes in the contract if need be, or even to end the contract if it needs to be as well. And I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Vice Chair Borman. Great points. Member Kawanabe.
Yeah, I think I agree that we should move forward. At the very first, we should decide yes, one way or another, or no, that we are recommending moving forward with negotiations on a single hauler. I think that will define whether or not we need to go into the details, right? I personally believe we should continue with single hauler, but we should put that to the vote first. And then that being said, then we can get into the details. Because if we're not going to recommend moving to single hauler, then I think we'll waste a lot of time.
Okay, I understand your point. Member Brinker.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I was going to share some more of my thoughts and recommendations, but perhaps Member Kawanabe wants to make a motion, and then we could get more into the details after that.
May I suggest, if we're going to do a motion, that like I think we could potentially nearly all be for something if we structure it right. If we structure it such that what we recommend is that city council consider, like what our role is to recommend whether city council consider this or not. And what I would suggest is that we structure, and I'll be in favor of it if we do it right, we recommend to city council to move forward with negotiating to consider single hauler with these specific things that we know matter to the citizens based on all of the work that we've put into this. Member Brinker?
We're absolutely on the same page with that. So
Agreed.
yeah, with that point, Member Kawanabe, what do you think about me sharing some more of the recommendations I was thinking of?
Yeah, do you want to show your ideas, Member Brinker, before we do this?
Sure.
Go ahead and share your screen.
Okay, I assume you can all see that. This is a lot of details and this is all open for negotiation, but I was putting down what I thought would maybe be the most reasonable for what we could move forward with and recommend to city council. And I was focusing, like I said earlier, on cost reduction and simplicity. So I agree with basically what all of you said, that we need to renegotiate with the haulers, given that neither one responded to the terms of the RFP. And so I was suggesting, first of all, that we request the staff negotiate with the haulers for the following conditions, and then move forward with whichever one could meet these. And these can be tweaked as long as we don't take 10 more meetings to do it. But I think that they'd have to meet the price of 25 or under per household per month, including the city admin fee, and that's pegged to the price that Waste Services currently has on their website for Trash Plus Recycle. And we already voted on recycling being included at no additional cost. Annual price increase of 3% or the consumer price index, whichever's lower. A small opt-out fee after the first year. Like Director Andreas said, $1.72 to the city. I rounded up to $1.75. We could consider saying that that same amount would go to the hauler if you opt out, and that would avoid the need to have the renegotiation if more than 10% opt out. But I put 2 little asterisks there because I know that that's something to discuss, but that's just a rough proposal. 96-gallon bins, because even though I'm in favor of the pay-as-you-throw concept, we didn't see any significant cost savings from that. One provider was exactly the same cost no matter what your size. The other was so minor that it really didn't matter. So 96 gallons for simplicity. And then here's what I was thinking about alley service. Alley service upon request for any household that has 3 or more steps to their sidewalk, or an extra steep grade, or any other unique terrain difficulties. In other words, not alley service for absolutely anybody that would want it, but alley service where needed. And I think that that would meet most residents' desires, because the ones that really want alley service are the ones where it's really a pain in the neck to get their bins to the curb. And Member Borman was just pointing out that we do have a lot of wear and tear from trucks on the alleys. So to the extent we could discourage alley pickup while still offering it as an option, I thought this could be a reasonable compromise. So that's something we hadn't discussed, but could be worth considering. So there, I thought would be the bare minimum terms that someone would have to agree to for our recommendations. And then the rest, cut out large item pickup reluctantly, but I was looking towards cost savings, and I think that that's reasonable to consider the yard waste swap there. And related to that, I was thinking perhaps we could say no extra trash bags outside the bin without paying additional bag fee, but that's for trash, not including yard waste. For yard waste, I might suggest we defer that to the staff and to city council to decide, given our contention and our inability to reach a full agreement there on yard waste. So basically say our committee couldn't reach agreement on that and let the staff and city council decide that. I would also cut out citywide yard waste events from the proposal, given that we could hopefully try to continue how they were already provided, however they were funded through the previous KEB events. Maybe a yard waste drop-off site like some other cities have, opt-in compost we talked about. So in other words, trying to find some additional options for yard waste. We could see if they could exempt low-income households from the admin fee. And I liked Member Brown's point earlier about attempting to reduce the staffing needs in order to reduce the admin fees. I don't know if that's possible, but it's something we could definitely recommend looking into. I'm almost at the end. We already voted on recommending that city council require multifamily properties and sorry, I'm missing a word there. It's supposed to say commercial properties to offer recycling to tenants. We can't mandate a single provider, but city council could have an ordinance that they have to at least offer recycling, and then recommend the city council vote on this so that they can tweak and adjust the program as needed, so we don't get something that has a design flaw that's set in stone. Okay, so sorry to dominate the floor right there, but I thought I wanted to just get all my thoughts out on paper, because sometimes it's hard to just discuss those orally and keep track of what's what. And I think the overall, that top item seems to be where I was hearing the rest of you guys lead about this could be possible if we get the right terms, and given that neither provider met the exact terms of the RFP, we do still have the opportunity to talk with them one-on-one to try to meet some of these suggestions.
Thank you, Member Rinker. I appreciate all of what you put together there. I'm going to go ahead and respond first since I don't see any other hands up. Overall, I like where you're going with this. I don't like the way that you've defined alley service, because I can already think of, even just within a couple blocks of me, people that need it that don't have steps or necessarily a steep driveway grade, et cetera. I really think when you consider the fact that Republic accepted full alley service for waste and recycling at that price almost, we know that it's possible. We know that there's not a reason it can't be done. And while I get that some people want to discourage it and move away from it, we do know that it's very important for a lot of people. And one aspect that I don't know that everyone realizes is if you have an alley and you have the ability to leave your bins at the alley, that also supports elderly, disabled, people who have trouble moving bins, because they don't have to move them. And that reduces the argument against the 96 gallon bins, because as we saw, we're not really getting a benefit by going pay as you throw with the smaller sizes. But if you've got an alley and you can't move the bins, could you leave it up? It just went away.
Sorry, I don't know why it just went away. I'm trying to. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
Give me a minute. There we go.
Okay, thank you. But my point is, alley service for people who are disabled, elderly, et cetera, makes it so they don't even have to move the bins. They can leave them at the alley and take their trash and recycling out to them, which is massively, repeatedly communicated in the comments of the survey results over and over and over. Tons of people talked about that. So I think we should just make alley service upon request for any household waste recycling as part of the recommendation. We know it's possible. Republic could do it. So, why not put that in what they're negotiating for? And then I would also argue to try to include yard waste, because as it stands right now, it was including the large item pickup, which is less important to more people, whereas yard waste is currently included by 63% of the respondents, and really, and the third most important thing. So I mean, that's what I would say we recommend to City Council. I understand why you would put that in possibly no committee recommendation, but I think if this committee really wants to respond to what the citizens have stated, both in the original gathering of data and in the new gathering of data, then I would be in support of this if it said alley service across the board and included yard waste. And we recommend to City Council to negotiate those top points, because it gets rid of the need for pay as you throw for almost all instances of someone who's concerned about the size of the bins, because in most of those cases, it is going to be the older houses with the alleys. And then we're taking into account what people have asked for, and I'll stop talking. Member or Vice Chair Borman.
Yeah, I just had one comment about the recycling out in the alleyways. this is probably a side sort of thing, but one of the things that I really liked, I can't remember which it was. I think it might have been Waste Management, but they had the smart trucks that actually could help detect contamination in the recycling. And because they can't do the automated ones where they have the ability to kind of use that camera, it's one of the reasons that I actually do favor having mostly recycling being in front, is because although we don't have to worry too much about contamination of garbage, we do have to worry about contamination of the recycling. And that was one of the things that I thought would address, because instead of sending out a generic, hey, don't throw this in the recycling, it actually could be targeted to its specific resident that might be tossing something in that's not recyclable or something like that. But, like I'd be okay with saying alley service, especially for garbage, especially with any need, demonstrated need, like I saw Christine typed in there. And that's it.
Thank you, Vice Chair Borman. Member Brinker.
Thanks. Can I make a couple responses to the points you made? I think you were mostly talking about alley service and yard waste. On alley service, I think we could craft this in a broad enough way that the people that really need alley service could get it. And the rest would be pushed towards curb service. And the reason I think that that's worth considering is the huge wear and tear that trucks have on our dirt alleys, our dirt and gravel alleys in particular. And second, the huge efficiencies, both in terms of time and labor, that the trash companies prove to us with having more efficient trucks. And by more efficient, I mean, in this case, faster, without a person having to get out. And that, I think, leads to the price reductions that we're going to need. That was something that we all got an education on from the trash haulers. They can move a lot faster and they can service all the houses with a lot less labor the more people that are at the curb compared to the alley. So just because they can do it can do the alley doesn't mean that that's the best approach overall for the cities, for the city. So I think that that's worth still considering, allowing alley service for those who need it and pushing people towards curb service who don't really need it. And maybe there's a way that we could craft this large enough, this bullet, to encompass any additional scenarios that I hadn't considered there. Yard waste. If I can be honest, I'm sick to death of our discussions on yard waste. I'm not a drinker, but I want to go grab a bottle of wine every time yard waste comes up, because it feels like it's half of our meetings. So I really don't want to continue talking about it. I know that it's very important to you. I've got that message loud and clear. That's why I still think that I didn't say it shouldn't be included. I just said that that's something we defer to the staff and to city council to decide. And the main point against yard waste is that it has a potential to increase costs. So here I was looking for ways to reduce the costs, and I do absolutely get your point that it is a current service offered by some of the providers, and it is an important service to some residents. So those points I've got loud and clear, but I still think that I'd rather not continue talking about it ad nauseum and just allow city council to consider those same points and do what they think is best.
Thanks, Member Brinker. Member Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Member Brinker. You apparently have put a lot of time and effort into this recommendation. My idea is that I don't particularly like just the 96-gallon bins. That's going to be hard on some people, including myself, if I have to go to the curb, because I do have a lot of steps in my front yard. Plus I have hills. So I'm not in favor of just the 96-gallon bins. Perhaps if I received alley service. But the problem with me is I'm a single person. I don't need a 96 gallon. And 32 gallon is even way too much for me for the trash I generate. So I would ask that we go ahead and what we did in the RFP, we asked for a 32 gallon bin. And yes, I know we've spoken about yard waste ad nauseum. I understand what you're saying, Member Brinker, but the fact is, even people who came to city council and spoke up was talking about this, and people who have large trees like mine, it's very concerning because just having a tree in my front yard, is that going to cost me a lot of money to clean up? You know, just to put extra bags out there. I mean, my other alternative is to cut my tree down. And I'm not being facetious, but I can't spend $3 and some cents a bag for my leaves. So it's very important to me, and I believe it is to the rest of the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Brown. Member Kawanabe.
Yeah, before we get into all the minutia, I do want to make a motion that we are going to, one way or another, or we're not going to, propose City Council continue considering single hauler. So I'd like to make a motion separate of the proposed recommendation list.
Second.
Okay. All right, Ms. Chavez, please take a vote on that motion.
Oh, wait, can I word my motion first?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the nuance matters. I mean, that's whether I'm
Sure.
going to vote for it or not.
Absolutely. I move that our committee recommends to the Inglewood City Council to continue to consider single hauler trash service with continued negotiations listed on the proposed recommendation list. Emphasis on continued negotiations.
Well, okay. The only thing I'd say about that is that we haven't, like, I don't know what the proposed recommendation list ends up as, because we've still been talking about this and I feel like it can still be refined. So
That's a fair rebuttal. My answer to that would be, if we decide not to move forward, then it doesn't matter, right? There would be no proposed negotiation list or proposed recommendation list.
So but your motion mentions a proposed recommendation list, but I don't know what the contents of that are that I'm voting on.
I'd like to second a Member Quantity's motion.
So what, but what I'm saying is that even if we're, well, I don't know what I'm voting on, because
So,
we don't know what's in the proposed recommendation list that you're referencing in the motion.
so I'm separating these into two separate issues, right? We can talk about what goes into the proposed recommendation list separately than if we are going to move forward at all. So the first motion is just to address if we're going to recommend to City Council to consider negotiations or to consider single hauler.
Okay, I would rather be able to vote yes on it, and the only way I'm going to be able to do that is if it's got the nuance in it. So, but that's fine. You can make your motion.
Thank you.
And then we can vote on it. So it's already been, so the motion is not mentioning the nuance at all. It's just whether we are recommending to City Council to continue considering single hauler or not without any nuance, right?
Correct. Because if we
Okay.
talk about the nuance, then it's going to be, it might not matter. Because if a majority of us don't want to recommend single hauler, then
Yeah, we know that's not going to be the case.
We'd like to get it on record though.
Okay, Ms. Chavez, please take a vote.
Chair
Can you
Green?
read, can you read the motion as you have it written first?
I'm sorry, I don't have it yet. I would have to look at the recording and gather that.
Do you want to state it again, Member Quantibe?
Sure. I move that our committee recommends to the Inglewood City Council to continue to consider single hauler trash service with continued negotiations listed on the proposed recommendation list.
Okay, so now you are including the proposed recommendation list that we don't know what the contents of are yet.
Correct.
That's so difficult. I don't understand why we can't just work on the list more, but okay.
You're free to say no.
Yeah. So go ahead, Ms. Chavez.
All right, Chair Green,
No, not without knowing what the terms that we're recommending are.
Vice Chair Borman,
Yes.
Member Brown,
No,
Member Hupka,
She's not a member of this
I'm
committee
sorry.
anymore.
Member Kawanabe,
Yes.
Member Laib,
Yes.
Member Brinker,
Yes.
all right, motion carries.
Thank you. All right, so can we continue working on what this proposed recommendation list is? Member Kawanabe?
Yeah, so I have a proposed methodology to do that. I think what if we use the list of on page 14 of the survey that had the bar charts, it'll give us guidance as far as like what should be addressed primarily, and then we can kind of put those in order of priority.
So cost, reliability, yard waste.
Correct. And then we can make our negotiations based on the majority of the survey.
So Member Brinker, could you bring that up again, please? And you know, I heard your thing about yard waste, but the reality is yard waste was the third highest priority thing in this survey. It's been brought up tons of times in front of city council, and it's something that's already included, and 63% of people already have it. So it is a huge issue. I mean, I don't, you know, I'm sorry to talk about something you don't like to hear about, but I don't like forced recycling, even though I recycle more than I throw away. And I don't like the large item, which never made any sense to me because it was something that nobody has and sounded super expensive. And since we know that the proposals, one of them at least included large item and the other included alley service for everyone, which we know is super desirable. I mean, that's what, I mean, I would be for this, and I'd vote, we could do a new motion and I'd vote for it if we could say alley service for anyone who wants it and yard waste, and recommend that city council negotiate based on that. I mean, couldn't we all vote for that? Is there really a negative to that? Member Brinker? You have your hand raised. And you're on mute. Member Brinker?
Chair, and find the lower hand
Wait,
thing.
I couldn't hear you.
Sorry about that. I was trying to find the raise hand and lower hand when I have a screen share because it moves it to a different place. So I'm going to lower my hand for now. And I'll let you continue on with the conversation, and I'll put the recommendations back up again. I would like to reemphasize that I don't think anyone here is going to get everything that they would like to see, both within the committee and amongst citizens as a whole within the community. And we can try to find something where the majority of us could agree with the majority of the recommendations. And I think that that's just the best way that the committee is going to work. And that's how I've seen other committees work. And to the degree possible, I'd like to not have to go repeat our previous long discussions about each and every item. I do still hope that we can wrap this up today, and I might make a motion for a package of recommendations and go from there, and then consider what City Manager Lewis said at the beginning about perhaps adding additional notes and items where we think city council needs more discussion and where our committee couldn't reach a decision.
Vice Chair Borman. And Member Brinker, please, thank you, and please put the thing back up.
I was just gonna
Will
say
do
that,
it. Just give me a minute if I have my hand raised to try to find where the button goes.
No problem.
I was just gonna say, Member Brinker's wording on the cost. I like, that was our number one thing from the survey, and I like that it says price $25 or under per household per month, inclusive of the city admin fee. I think should be on our list of things that maybe we should just, include in a base recommendation or vote relatively rapidly on for certain things to send to the city council. Also include the recycling included at no cost. And even the annual price increases, the first three things in there. I hope we could hopefully just put into the recommendations to city council. I guess I'll put that as a motion, maybe. I motion that we put the first three items in this proposed recommendation list, the price $25 or under, recycling at no additional cost, and annual price increases of 3% or water, sewer, trash, CPI, whichever is lower, into our recommendations for city council to consider.
You mean just those or just starting with those?
Just starting with those.
I'll
Since they're
second
related
that.
to cost, the top thing in our survey.
Sure, I'll second that. So what we're voting on is that we're going to include in our proposed recommendation the top three as written. Ms. Chavez, will you please take a vote?
Chair Green,
Yes.
Vice Chair Borman,
Yes.
Member Brinker,
Yes.
Member Brown,
Sorry, no.
Member Kawanabe,
Yes.
Member Lave.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chair Borman. Did you have another thing? Your hand's still up.
Sorry.
No worries. So I'll make go ahead, Member Kwanabe.
Oh, I was just going to agree with you that I think we can simplify the alley service just to wherever possible. I don't know if we need to get into the minutia on that one. And then we can add in the tree service negotiations as well.
All right, so I'll make a motion on that. I move that we add, let's just do them one at a time now on these motions, see where we end up. I move that after, so we make the fourth one, alley or curb service for any anyone who, at what, as the RFP stated, per household choice, alley service for waste and recycling per household choice. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Member Kwanabe. Ms. Chavez, will you please take a vote on that?
Chair Green,
Yes.
Vice Chair Borman,
Yes.
Member Brinker,
No.
Member Brown,
So we're voting on alley or curb service, is that correct?
Yes, we're
Chair?
voting on adding that to our recommendation, that not broken out to where only certain cases, but to where anybody who wants alley service can have it.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. So just to be clear, Member Brown, it's already been voted that we're recommending to City Council that they move forward with considering single hauler service. And now we're since that's going forward, whether we like it or not, we're voting on what is going to be included in that, in our recommendation for their negotiation. So this I thought was something that you were for. If they were to do this, we want them to have alley or curb service upon household choice for waste and recycling, which is what my motion is. So do you want to
Okay.
reconsider your abstain?
Yes, I will vote yes.
Thank you.
Member Kawanabe,
Yes.
member Late,
Yes.
motion carries.
So that's without the alternative. It's alley, and it's also for waste and recycling.
In that case, I'll make a motion to include an alternative for city council to consider.
Okay. But let's,
And maybe that would go in a second.
yeah, I would say,
page here, like, where we put some of the nuance, because a couple of these might have that. None of them are black and white.
right. I mean, I would say, okay, you made the motion. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, so can you first finish that line the way that I said it and get rid of the alternative part, since that's already been voted on? Alley or curb service for waste and recycling based on household choice.
Yeah, so this would go onto this next page, which is a mess, so don't look into it yet. But let me just park it there for the time being. And then you want this to say exactly what?
Alley or curb service upon household choice for waste and recycling. Which is how, I mean, that's what I said in the thing we just voted on. Okay, and then you have a motion for an alternative. Do you want to do that right now, or do you want to come up with, do alternatives after? You can keep your motion, and we already have a second too. So I guess let's vote. Ms. Chavez, will you please take a vote? And what this is the language that Member Brinker has on that second slide, whether we include that as an alternate consideration in our proposal to City Council.
I'm sorry, and who seconded?
Member Kawanabe, right?
Correct.
Okay, Chair Green,
No.
Vice Chair Borman,
Yes.
member Brinker,
Yes.
member Brown,
No,
member Kawanabe,
Yes.
member Late.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, I like where we're going with this though. So we've got our main points and then we've got our alternative recommendations. Can you go back to the main points?
Give me a minute.
All right, let's put a line, just give us a space between what we've already included. Yeah, there you go. Now, why did you add this is discussion. Why did you add the hauler? Like, why should the hauler get an opt-out fee? I mean, I thought you liked, Member Brinker, I'm addressing you. I thought you liked the structure that Waste Management came up with, where it's a straight opt-out unless it goes up to the over 10%, and then that gives them a chance to renegotiate.
Yeah, I like that too. I'm willing to consider that.
All right.
This
so I
is
could-
more concrete in that we wouldn't have to go back to the negotiating table, but I'm still open to that previous one. So.
All right, I'll make a
discussion.
motion for that. So I propose that, or I make a motion that in our proposed recommendation, we recommend City Council negotiate for basically the waste management recommended structure for opt-out. So the first year, all citizens would be required to participate. And after the first year, they could opt out, only having to pay the admin fee of, about $2. And then if more than 10% opted out, then it would trigger a negotiation. Is there a second?
I'll second it. This is Kanji.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Quanabe. So we could wait till she writes it out. So opt out allowed after first year, only city admin fee, right? Yeah, and then you might even want to tab. Can you tab right there? Yeah, there you go. Okay, so that's the motion on the table. Ms. Chavez, will you please take a vote?
Chair Green,
Yes.
Vice Chair Borman,
Yes.
Member Brinker,
Yes.
Member Brown,
I'm really conflicted on this one. Okay, yes.
Member Kawanabe,
Yes.
Member Labe,
Member Labe?
Yes.
okay, motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Chavez. So discussion. Member Brown, since you've brought up many times the pay-as-you-throw model with different size bins, if we're recommending that they negotiate to get the alley service, is that still as much of an important thing? Because for so many people who have alley, they could just leave their bin at the alley and take their trash out to it and not have to move it around.
I'm only speaking for myself, but yes, I believe a 96 gallon is too much for some people to handle. And I have an incline in my driveway, and for me, it's way too much, a 96 gallon bin, because I just don't generate that much trash. So yes, it is important to me anyway, Chair Green, that we are at least able, that I'm at least able to get a 32 gallon. And
well, do you want to make a motion and have us consider that whether city council should try to negotiate for different sizes? Because I mean, I get it. I don't produce hardly any trash myself either. I never fill up the 96 gallon trash, but it doesn't matter to me if I can leave it on the alley and just throw my trash in it. I don't really care how big it is. But if you feel like that's still something that we need to consider, then you could make a motion that we consider putting that in that into the proposed recommendation or not.
okay, I mean, the problem that I have is that I will make a motion. Because the problem with our alley or my alley is we have many, many people walking down our alley, and they just use our bins to throw away their stuff. And so I don't like keeping my bin in the alley. And especially if we're going to be mandated to have recycling, what's to say that somebody walking down the alley doesn't throw something in the recycling that shouldn't be in there, but they don't care. So yeah, I'll make a motion
Do you, just real quick before you do that, let's see if what member Brinker is trying to say might be relevant to what
Okay.
you're about to propose.
Okay,
Yeah, I thought I just wanted to repeat the pros and cons that I was hearing. If we include 32 and 96 gallon bins, it's easier for some residents, especially disabled or elderly, to manage the smaller size. It's easier for households that don't generate a lot of trash. We were hoping that it would be an incentive to have less trash and that you'd get a lower cost. That didn't turn out to be the case, really. So those are the pros for allowing both sizes. The cons are that at least for one provider, the cost for the 96 gallon was higher overall than if everyone had the same size. And they
You mean
said
if
that's
32, you said price was higher for 96, but you mean,
yeah. I one provider said the cost is the same no matter what size you have. The other provider gave a flat fee for the one size, but for the pay as you throw, they gave a slightly higher cost than for the 96 gallon than if everyone just had the same bin size. And they said that that's because it's extra labor to have to get their trucks to grasp different size units. I think Director Andre may have a clarification on that.
I remember what you're saying. That does sound right. Go ahead, Director DeAndrea.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying, Member Brinker, is that it's higher for the 96 gallon in the pay as you throw, but the 32 gallon was less in the pay as you throw from that provider. But the
Right, okay.
96 gallon for pay as you throw was slightly higher than the 96 gallon across the board from that same provider.
Which is probably going to be most citizens. So that means that it's higher for most citizens if we did it that way, right?
Yeah, and then just to finish that thought, then when I've been looking at everyone's trash cans driving down the road, like you probably all have, and they're essentially all 96 gallon. That seems to be the standard size that providers offer now, including waste services. They just say 96 gallon, that's what you get. So in that sense, people are kind of used to it, and it's what the providers are offering. And then I guess the other reason for 96 is just simplicity, just plain simplicity. But I think those pros and cons kind of even them out. So I'm open to Member Brown's motion.
okay.
So
well,
go ahead and state your motion, Member Brown.
Okay, I hope I state this right. If not, you correct me, Chair Green. So I'm going to make a motion that council consider 32 gallon in addition to 96 gallon bins.
As
do-
part of their negotiation.
Right, for further negotiation.
Okay. I'll second that. Ms. Chavez, will you please take a vote on that? Can you put that back up so we can see it, Member Brinker?
Yep, just give me a minute. Yeah, maybe you could lower my hand after I talk, because that's challenging.
Okay, I can do that. I can do
Okay,
that.
great. Coming right up.
Thank you.
All right, Chair Green,
Yes.
Vice Chair Borman,
Yes.
Member Brinker,
Yes.
Member Brown,
Yes,
Member Kawanabe,
No.
Member Lee.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Then can I make a related motion to put under our alternative recommendations?
Go ahead.
Just plain 96.
I'll second that. Ms. Chavez, will you please take a vote? So basically we're we're gonna have two, our main proposed recommendation will include requesting that city council try to negotiate for both 32 and 96, but we're adding for them to consider if that, just 96 in the alternative recommendations, if they can't get that, right?
Yeah.
So Ms. Chavez, please take a vote on the alternative recommendation.
Chair Green,
Yes.
Vice Chair Borman,
Yes.
Member Brinker,
Yes.
Member Brown,
Yes.
Member Kawanabe,
Yes.
and Member Lade.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you. All right. I'd like to make a motion to recommend that for the proposed recommendation for Member Brinker's favorite yard waste, include yard waste based on the current definition of what is included by waste services and waste management right now, which is, I forget exactly, it's like 4 bundles of branches and 5 bags each time. So I would like to make a motion to include that in the proposed recommendation as a negotiation point to include instead of the large item pickup, since that's been expressed as more important by more citizens and will probably cost less than large item pickup. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Member Quanabe. Did you have a question about it? Member Brown, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so this motion, I'm sorry, there you go. So we're only going to get 4 bundles of branches and 5 bundles of leaves, which means
That's bags. not-
bags.
Or it's
Sorry.
based on it's the definition out of the RFP. It's whatever we had in the RFP. So it's swapping out large item for this because I think this is cheaper and we've seen that it's what more people care about. And that's intended, my motion is to put that under proposed recommendation at the top, not as additional.
Okay,
Right,
so
right.
didn't we have 10 bags before this?
That was the different thing with the whole large item pickup twice a year, 10 bag stuff. I'm trying to not make it more than what people currently have. What's in the RFP is based on what is currently included by waste services and waste management. I think it's per pickup, 4 bundles of
Okay.
branches and 5 bags.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it was per pickup.
Yeah, this is about
Okay.
including it per pickup, not
Okay,
once or twice a year. It's instead of the large item pickup.
right, I understand. I thought you were talking about yearly. So per
No.
pickup is fine with me. Yes. Okay, thank you for that clarification, Chair Green.
So is there a
Small-
second? Oh, yeah,
small
member
question.
Kawanabe. Go ahead, member Brinker.
Would you be amenable to 4 and 4 just to make it nice and even?
I would be fine with that. Member Brown,
Oh,
did you have your hand raised still? Or was
no.
that from before?
sorry.
You accept that friendly amendment, the second, member Kawanabe?
I do.
Okay, Ms. Chavez, will you please take a vote on this?
Chair Green,
Yes.
Vice Chair Borman,
Yes.
Member Brinker,
Yes.
Member Brown,
Yes,
Member Kawanabe,
Yes.
Member Lade left the meeting. All right, but motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and you could even put in there just as defined in the RFP, because except for I'm fine with we made it the 4 and 4. We don't need to go up to whatever it was. Yeah. All right. Does anyone else want to make any more, or Member Brown, you got your hand raised again?
yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted, I know we've already passed that motion, but the 32 and the 96 gallon bin size, you know, Waste Management says they have a process for any kind of container because they bought out other service provider containers. So I don't see why that should present, at least Waste Management, a problem. That's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're obviously over time, but I'm very happy with where we're, you know, I appreciate everyone's participation in getting us to where we're at. Is there anything else anyone wants to propose to try to get into our main points to recommend to City Council for their renegotiation? Is there anything?
What did you, can you repeat that?
Oh, I was asking if anyone wanted to make any more motions for adding anything else to the top points for what we're going to recommend to City Council to include in their negotiation. Member Kawanabe?
I don't have anything to add to the primary points. I'm wondering if everybody would be amenable to bulk approving the additional program recommendations as listed.
Let me read through them. Everyone read through those and we'll see if we can do that. Is everything what right now, Member Brinker, you've got some things on that second slide and some things at the bottom of this one. I'm not sure what's what.
Up here, the first up here is what the provider has to do.
Right. No, I'm clear on the top part. That's what we're
And the-
recommending to City Council to include in their negotiation. And then
What-
I'm
right.
talking about the alternative or additional stuff. You've got some on the bottom here and some on the next slide.
Right, so the ones on the bottom are still our main recommendations. They're still what we recommend, but they're not what the provider has to do. They're more
Okay,
for the
well,
city.
so you could remove the second one since yeah, right? Because, all right. And then. Member Quanabe, did you raise your hand again? Or we're still, I just read through that and I'm fine with that. I could vote to bulk add the additional recommendations as they stand.
No, I'm good. The only word change, instead of attempt to reduce staffing needs, just review staffing needs.
Review and minimize.
Yeah, so HR, I mean, that's kind of my field. And so I know the legalities that go behind this. And so I'm pretty sure that they did their due diligence. And so I think they can review it, but they're going to come up with the same recommendation.
Anybody else have any? Oh, Member Brown?
Where it says consider exempting low-income households from administrative fee. I mean, that's $1.72. Shouldn't we put something in there about possibly senior rates or military rates or something like that? I mean, $1.72 is really nothing, considering how much money they're paying overall for this single trash hauler
So would
program.
you structure that like consider senior and fixed income discounts or something like that?
Yes. Yes, I would.
What do anybody else have any issue with that or?
No, I think they could talk about it. For sure.
I don't mind that they consider it, but some seniors are low income and fixed income, but not all of them. I mean, there are a lot of households with seniors that are way better off than millennial households and so forth. So I wouldn't make an exemption just based on age.
Okay, that makes sense. Can we word it different? Can we word it, consider discounts for households that need it and let them figure out what that is? Something like that. Yeah, I'm fine with that. How about that, Member Brown?
Those are discounts for low income households. I'm
Does
sorry,
that-
are you still typing, Member
No.
Brinker?
No,
Okay. Yeah, that would be fine with me.
Any other adjustments? Do you want to make your motion, Member Quanebe?
Sure. I move that the committee approves the additional program recommendations as listed.
What happened? Oh, you're just moving them around?
yep,
Did you paste? Oh, yeah. No, not
Sorry.
yet. Oh, yeah, you did. Okay, I see it.
sorry about that.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Member Quanebe. Do you want to
Okay.
restate that?
Sure. I move that the committee approve the additional program recommendations as listed.
I'll second that. I'm sorry, Ms. Chavez, will you please take a vote?
Chair Green,
Yes.
Vice Chair Borman,
Yes.
Member Brinker,
Yes,
Member Brown,
Yes,
Member Kawanebe.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you. All right, should we consider what we have on our alternative and finish this out?
mm-hmm,
Let's take a look at that.
right.
So we already voted on the alternative on alley service and that's already in. Then actually, what do we have on the bin size here? Is there?
We did.
Oh,
vote
I
on
see.
it
It
already.
was, yeah, we voted on an alternative of 96 only. So then we're already done. Does anyone else have any other discussion on all this, or are we going to be happy with making this our recommendation to City Council?
I think I just want to put a sub bullet under this for the pros and cons for why they might want to consider it.
Okay. Wait, you mean on alley service?
On alley service and bin size both.
Okay. Can you switch back to the first slide real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Request that staff so further negotiate individually with the haulers for all of the following conditions and recommend that City Council accept whichever hauler can provide the following package. Okay. I mean, I feel like the pros and cons are pretty clear and have been discussed at nauseum, as well as we'll have the opportunity to be there. I'm planning on being there at the study session on the 11th, and you all are welcome. And
Mhm.
let's show up as a committee and on the 11th to the City Council meeting and go over this with them and answer their questions, is my suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so does anyone else, oh, Member Brown?
first of all, are we invited to the 11th study session?
I don't know why we wouldn't be, but Director DeAndrea, is there a reason that we would not be able to participate in that? I thought that was part of what they wanted.
Yes, I don't know if City Manager Lewis clarified that, but we have had a request from the City Council to have the committee attend the April 11th study session. So they requested a study session in advance of the April 18th actual City Council meeting where a decision might be made. And so on April 11th, they would have a study session, which normally, as some of you know, usually they don't take public testimony, but as the committee, they've requested that you be part of that. We're still figuring out the logistics, but we would like to have you attend if possible. And I'll send out an email tomorrow with the date and time and location, since Member Labe has already dropped off.
Okay. And then, so what we'll do is we'll have all of this that we just successfully came up with together in a unified front, which I'm really impressed. Thank you, everyone, for all of your work on everything we've done throughout all this. I know it hasn't been easy, but I really appreciate everyone's input and participation. And I think we can present this together in a really good way that does represent what we've learned from citizens. Member Brown?
Yeah, I just have one comment. I mean, I just feel that the citizens should have a say in this, and they're not getting a say at all. So I don't know if we're all going to be unified on this. I'm just letting you know because citizens want it to go from what they said at council meetings, what I've seen on social media, they want it to go to a ballot. And I mean, actually, yes, we've done a lot of work, but ultimately who's going to make the decisions? It's not going to be the committee, it's going to be city council. So I just have a little bit of a problem with that because the citizens won't be as involved as I would have hoped them to be.
Well, and just to respond to that, this does not preclude that it could go to a ballot. What this is we are citizens who were brought together to be in this committee to make a recommendation to city council. So our recommendation to city council is that they should still consider it, but that since the RFPs was not responded to satisfactorily by any hauler, we're recommending that they, based on what we learned from this whole process, that they, you know, that they consider it if they can get these things, that these would satisfy citizens. But city council is also aware that 60+% of citizens who filled out the survey want it on the ballot, and there's still the plenty of opportunity for citizens who don't want this at all to continue to make their voices heard. But what we're doing is satisfying our requirement as a committee of making a recommendation to city council as best we can, which we just did. And we'll meet with city council on the 11th in their study session and answer questions and talk about this, and we can represent our different perspectives, but this is what we've come up with to recommend to them. And then there's no reason that citizens can't still push for a ballot. And even if, you know, what I would hope is if it went to ballot, that city council would have negotiated for these things and then put it to ballots to say, if, you know, now that we've got a proposal that covers all these things that we know citizens want, should we do it or not? You know, and it's possible that that could happen, that we're not precluding that this goes to ballot, but that's not our choice. That's city council. We're just making a recommendation to city council as to what next steps are. And I think we've done a good job at that.
No, I agree with you. We've put in a lot of time and effort and work into this. I'm just still concerned that people are going to say they didn't have a say so in this. That's all. But thank you.
Thank you, Member Brown. Okay. So let me just hit our agenda. I believe we have done everything. So it's chairperson's choice. Oh, that's me. Sorry. I want to say thank you, everyone. This has been a challenging situation for all of us at times, certainly for me. But I really appreciate getting to know all of you as we've worked through this, and all of your efforts and all of your concern and care. And I appreciate all of you. Thank you. Committee members' choice. Member Brown.
Well, I would like to say thank you to you too, Chair Green. You've put in a lot of time and effort, and to everyone else on this committee, I'd like to say thank you. It's been different working with everybody, and I know we've all got our viewpoints, but I think overall we've done pretty well. So thank you.
Vice Chair Borman.
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody too. I'm actually pretty impressed. We came around really pretty great tonight to a pretty good consensus, and I really commend Member Brinker for coming up with these recommendations that we kind of loosely based everything off of. She really did a great service to this evening, and thanks to Director DeAndrea for everything as well, and you, Chair Green. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Borman. And yeah, thank you very much, Director DeAndrea. I think you've done an excellent job throughout this whole process. I'm sure it hasn't been easy.
Yes.
You all have been wonderful. I'll say that. Because again, there's this public process at work, right? And if we all agreed on everything, there wouldn't be any dissension. But that's the public process, and I think you've all come together well. And I appreciate your time. And it's unimaginable when we started out that it would take this long. But I hope that you all feel that the process was open and that your voices were heard, and that we helped along the way to assist you in getting to this point. But thank you all.
Thank you. All right. I'll see you all on the 11th. Thank you.
And member Brinker, can you please send this to me via email?
Yep.
Too?
Will do.
Yeah,
Thank you.
me too, please. I'm
Will
Member
do.
Brinker. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.
You.
Bye.
Bye.